you see it happen every year. Guys from lower level schools or lesser known schools that just kind of seem to explode on the scene. And you're left scrambling trying to find out all you can about them because you see draft Twitter buzzing about them. You see NFL draft media talking about them. And you start to say, oh my God, who is this dude? Who is this walking, breathing form of football Jesus? One of those guys this year has to be Marcus Davenport from UTSA. This was a guy that as we got to the end of the college football season, people were really starting to buzz about him and really, really hyping him up from the point of most people not knowing who the hell he was a year ago to now talking about he might be a top 10 pick in this year's NFL draft. It's crazy how a prospect can get momentum and it just builds and builds and builds. But is that just media hype or is that kind of the reality? And the simple truth is, I don't know. And when it came time for me to grade Marcus Davenport, I was kind of befuddled. I wasn't really sure what to make out of him. This is a big guy who has the size to play a legit base end in a 4-3. He's 6'5", 6'6", 265 pounds. Arms 33.5 inches, so he's got great height, good length, decent size for the position. He'd be a really, really big 3-4 edge rusher, but I still feel like he's best as a 4-3 base. He's obviously an explosive athlete, which the 4.580 ran at the 40 at the combine with the 1.63 10-yard split shows. He is explosive in the short area. That does show up on film. He can absolutely explode off of the snap. There's no question. He's not Myles Garrett level, but he's at least equivalent to Bradley Chubb in that space. And you'll look at him, and you see, well, he put up 22 reps in the bench at the combine. That's good, but not great. But he plays like a dude that put up 35 or 40. I mean, he plays like a 300-plus pound interior lineman. Like, he is about size and strength and just bull rushing and running over and overpowering mofos. As Vach Lombardi would say, he's got ass whoop for days. I don't know if that's the whole thing he would say, but I had to work an ass whoop here somewhere for my dude Lombardi. All right? I worked it in. But yeah, he plays like a ferocious kind of Tasmanian devil in terms of power and strength. He can overwhelm people. He can set a physical edge against the run. He does a good job in pursuit and working down the line. I mean, I look at him and I'm like, man, is it just he looks as good because he played at UTSA? Or will this translate to the NFL? Well, that's the trick. Will it translate to the NFL? Is a 260-plus pound edge rusher going to be able to physically overpower and manhandle offensive tackles in the league? I don't know. And when you look at him, that's pretty much the only way he wins in the run game and as a pass rusher. It's just power, bull rush ability, strength, ass whoop. It's all of that. Because he doesn't do a whole lot else. He lacks an array of pass rush moves. The only other thing he really does well as a pass rusher is he sets up inside twist well, and that's about it. His hand usage is not very good. His leverage is so-so. He can struggle to get low and bend the edge. That's not really his game. Like, if he was 290, 295 pounds, I'm talking about a 5 technique and a 3-4, and I might be grading him higher than Bradley Chubb in this draft. Because then it would be easier to see at close to 300 pounds that strength and power with that burst and explosiveness translating to the league. But we're talking about somebody that's 264 pounds, 265 pounds. How well does that translate? How well would that translate as a run blocker, or a run defender, same thing. Because now you're going up against grown-ass men that are 320, 330, 340 pounds playing offensive tackle who are bigger, longer, and stronger than you. It's really hard to envision, at times, Davenport in his current construction as a player being able to translate to the league. Like, you can look at him at times and you say, oh my sweet Jesus, this dude is a beast. He can do things that Chubb can't do. That is true. Unfortunately for Davenport, there are a lot of things Chubb can do that Davenport cannot. And I'm concerned about his less than stellar hand usage, especially if he can't win with initial power. I'm concerned about his lack of great instincts and awareness for the position. He plays hard. I always like guys that play hard. But again, it just comes down to what else does he have? And primarily what I saw on him was a one-trick pony. That he had to win by physically dominating and overpowering people. And I worry about whether or not that truly translates to the league. Like when you look at the NFL or player comparison for him, there are two comparisons I threw out there. One was Ezekiel Ansah. Because Ezekiel Ansah coming out of BYU, like the physical upside and pure potential was obvious. It was a question of whether or not he would reach it. I was higher on Ezekiel Ansah than a lot of other people. I talked about how he should be a top 5 pick in that draft. And that draft was terrible anyway, so what the hell did it really matter? But he was a legit top 5 pick in that draft. In that really, really bad draft. But you could see the upside there. But you could also see the tremendous reason for concern. There was a lot of risk associated with taking a guy like him that high. Ended up being, again, not so much because the draft class wasn't that great. But I could see Davenport, physical profile, athleticism, strength. Everything is there for him to be able to be a double-digit sack guy and be a stud in the NFL. But then I look at him at times and he reminds me a lot of Emmanuel Ogbah when he was coming out of Oklahoma State. He was productive, but a lot of what you watched was ugly. And you couldn't quite figure out how the hell he got the job done. He just happened to get sacks. He happened to get in the backfield. But you're like, his technique sucks. His hand usage is bad. He's not great at bending the edge. Sometimes he could overpower people. But again, does that really translate to the league? And you look at Ogbah in the NFL. He's had a couple of moments, but he hasn't established himself as a stud. I'm really, really torn on Davenport. Like, to me, he's still worth taking somewhere in the late first to early second round range. I think he's worth taking in the first round, but I'm not 100% sold that he's worth taking as high as he probably will be taken. With Davenport, because he's an edge rusher and a really good athlete, I'd be stunned if he wasn't taken in the top 20 picks. Hell, his draft range could be anywhere from 10 to 20, starting with the Raiders at 10 and ending with the Lions at 20. Somewhere in there, I feel like somebody's going to want to roll the dice on Marcus Davenport. They may even want to do it with him as a 3-4 edge rusher, with the thought being is with that athleticism, with that initial burst and that size, he could be deadly coming off of the edge. He absolutely could. But would he be able to refine himself as a pass rusher? Would he be able to improve his technique to the level he would need to in order to be able to compensate for the lack of great hip flexibility and the lack of ability to truly bend the edge? How much would he be able to bend the edge when his game is primarily going to be exploding off of the staff and trying to overpower people? That could work. There's a lot of would, could, shoulds with this guy. So to me, he is a boom-bust guy to a degree because he could end up being better than Bradley Chubb. He absolutely could be. He also could end up in the wrong situation, the wrong scheme, team thinking they've got something that they don't, and the guy ends up washing out of the league in 5 years. I don't know what the hell to make out of him, even after watching him and watching him and watching him. That's why I put a first to second round grade on him. I'm like, yeah, he's probably one of the top 30 players in this draft, but man, I feel like I'd be taking a great risk if I took him in the top 20.